everybody. So today we are going to do our first garden tour. Now we're a little bit behind on all the garden updates, but some of the stuff has been included in the other videos that we've done, like the raised bed build and the oregano and tomato skins and the tool video. So I'll put some links in the description on those if you want to check those out if you didn't see them before. But I wanted to kind of take you on a quick garden walk and kind of show you where we're at so far and talk about some of the stuff we're growing this year. So this here is a rebuild in process. This was the old bed from last year that had the cilantro and oregano and nasturtiums in it, and the oregano is still coming up. I've moved the bed down. It used to be farther down this way, so that the oregano used to be kind of more in the middle of the bed, but I'm trying to line it up with the other beds that we've got going on there. So hopefully tomorrow we'll get some dirt put in here, and then we'll plant more cilantro and other herbs. And then I've got this old dilapidated thing that has been around for a few years, that last year I tried to grow some nasturtiums up on it, but they grew kind of slow, so it didn't really have the effect that I wanted it to. But it definitely needs a rebuild. It's pretty rickety right now, and it was just kind of thrown together. So, but I think it looks kind of cool, so I might kind of try to do something different and with it. So we'll see. So over here is our cucumber bed. I've got the cattle panel trellis that they grow up like we did last year. This year it's just straight regular cucumbers. Although, the thing that confuses me with these is look at the stems on these. Look how long they are. I've never had cucumbers grow this way. I don't know if maybe the soil was too wet and they were trying to get away from it, or what the deal was. But they're now just starting to kind of get some more leaves and branch out a little bit finally. But I don't know why the stems are so long. I've never had cucumbers do that. Normally they kind of stay on the ground and then grow additional vines from there. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with those. Over here is the cucamelon bed. And everything was planted late this year because we had a cold spring. We actually had snow after Mother's Day, so I had to start everything late. But we do have cucamelons coming up here. And then I wanted to use as much of the bed as possible because normally the cucamelons grow up this cattle panel trellis, and that's the bulk of where the volume is. And they do spread out this way some, but a lot of this edge of either side of the bed isn't used a whole lot. So I picked up at the farmer's market a flat of Swiss chard, 2 different kinds, and just put them all down either side of the bed. There's another one over here. So we'll see how they do. They're looking, I don't know if they're looking that healthy. This one's got some like little white spots on it. Maybe that's bug damage, I'm not sure. It's been a few years since I've grown Swiss chard, so we'll see how it does. If it does take off and do well, I am going to have more Swiss chard than I'm going to know what to do with. But maybe I'll go to the farmer's market and sell some bunches of it. Get some of the money back that I spent on buying the flat. Back here is our elderberry trees. They have really taken off this year. If you saw any of our videos last year, we planted these like probably midsummer. And now this year, they have just really branched out and are getting lots of blossoms on them. Got that there. Oliver needs to come see. Hi, Oliver. So we got 2 of these back here. And it looks like I need to fill my bird bath again. It's amazing how quickly the birds go through the water in this bird bath, especially since we haven't had hardly any rain in the last probably 3 weeks. But look how large these blossoms are. And I think, are going to use some tulle to cover these with, so that the birds don't eat all of our berries last year. We only had a few flowers on these last year and got a few berries, but the birds ate them all before we could get to most of them. I think we did get one small little batch. So the rhubarb. Let's talk about this for a minute. So this rhubarb down here, I got this from my sister last year. She brought over a big hunk of a root last spring, and I just kind of stuck it back here and see what was going to happen with it. Well, this year it really started taking off in the early spring, and I even got some like real big seed heads on it. Last year I didn't do anything with it. I let the seeds go, and I just wanted the plant to establish itself. I didn't want to cut anything back. And so that I could have some good rhubarb this year, because I love me some rhubarb. So this year, I mean, it was tall, great big leaves, beautiful, and it looked like it had really spread out. And if you follow us on the Facebook page or on the Instagram, you would have seen maybe a couple weeks ago, I had posted that I had harvested 2 pounds of rhubarb. And I, came out here and I cut it, and I cut off the seed heads because I didn't want it, all the energy to go into those. And so chopped off the seed head stalk things and cut a whole bunch of big leaves back. And then I, cut the leaves off, took it up to the house about dark, and I spent a lot of time, scrubbing them down, cleaning them. I chopped them up into probably like 1-inch pieces and blanched them, put them in a freezer bag, put them in the freezer. Was all excited about it. The one thing that I noticed was that they weren't very red for the most part. Some of them had some red stalks, but most of them were kind of green. And I did look up, and there are 2 varieties of rhubarb. There's a red variety and a green variety. So my sister stopped by about a week or so ago to get some eggs from us, and we were talking about the rhubarb, and I said, I was kind of sad that it wasn't the regular red rhubarb. It was green. And she's like, well, all of our rhubarb's red. And I was like, well, most of the stuff that I cut was green. And she's like, well, maybe it's the soil or something. And I was like, well, there is another variety, but the soil shouldn't change the color. So then we come back here and look, because there was still a lot back here that I had left. Yeah. So it wasn't rhubarb that I cut for the most part. There were a few stalks of rhubarb. Most of what I cut and spent all that time doing and was all excited about was burdock. There was a big burdock plant that had grown up kind of right here on the corner of this bed in the middle of the rhubarb. And I thought, and really, here, actually, let me show you some burdock. So this is burdock. This is a big burdock plant. And actually, burdock is edible. When it's small, it's, kind of almost like a spinach when it first comes up in the spring. But then as it grows, it gets more tough and stuff, and you wouldn't probably want to eat it when it gets this size. And then in the fall, it gets the burrs on it that, gets all stuck in your dog's hair. So here I had spent all this time cleaning and washing and cutting and blanching and freezing burdock, not rhubarb. I mean, I did get some stalks of the actual rhubarb because it was kind of all mixed in together. And actually, what threw me off when I was doing it was the seed heads were coming right up in the middle of the burdock. And so that's why I thought it was all rhubarb and just a different variety. So, even if you've been gardening for a while, you can still make some really dumb mistakes and waste time and have some real disappointments. So if you're a new gardener, don't feel bad. Stuff happens, as it were. So now the rhubarb is tiny because most of it was shadowed out by the burdock, which I've now dug out and got rid of. But now I think I'm going to need maybe another year for this to kind of help reestablish itself. I might, maybe some will come back. I don't know. I hope so. let's move on. Okay, so here we have a type of scallop squash. I think it's called scallop panache or something along those lines. I thought actually it was pineapple scallop panache or something like that. I was talking about it on my personal Facebook page, but I went back and looked at my seeds, and actually there is a pineapple something squash, and then there's this scallop panache squash. This isn't like your normal scallop squash. I think it's got like some green stripes or something in it. It's an heirloom variety, and my idea is to grow it up over our hoops here, which come up over, and get hopefully about halfway up that hoop. And then on this side I have butternut squash, and this is not what do you call it, mildew, powdery mildew. This is not powdery mildew. This is actually a I don't know, variegation or whatever in the plant leaves, and so we are okay. I know sometimes when you see stuff like this on your squash leaves, it gets a little scary, but powdery mildew is more, I don't know, lumpy, I guess maybe you want to call it. This is just variegated leaves, and you will see this on zucchini as well. So on both sides here, I've got the butternut squash, and I'm hoping that it grows up on this side, and then up here on this side to the middle, and then over here on this end of the bed I have honeyboat squash, which is more of a winter squash that I'm hoping will grow up the other side of the hoop. So if all goes well this summer, by mid-late summer, hopefully I will have vines that come up both sides of the hoops down on this end of the beds and have squash hanging down on our heads. That's the idea. All right, let's walk back over here. So this is the new bed I built this year. New bed, old dirt, old metal, just basically new area and new frames. The original two beds that I built last year, the first one, because I didn't give it enough support, it was the first bed that I had built, had bowed out really bad. So I took it all apart and saved the metal, but got rid of all the wood that had bowed out, got all new boards and built this new wood frame on here. Then I put the old metal and attached it in here, and then I also transferred all the old dirt from the original bed to this bed, and then I got new dirt for the other bed where I built a whole new bed. So now I've got 3 beds that are 24 feet long by 4 feet wide, along with 6 beds that are 8 by 4. So got some bed space going on. Put in some oregano, more oregano plant here that I'm hoping will establish itself in this bed. We've got tomatoes. I would love to tell you the variety, but I don't know, because I didn't mark any of the tomatoes that I planted this year. So I can tell you that this year I planted beefsteak, I think 5 beefsteak and 6 Berkeley pink tie-dye, which I had last year. And then I planted 1 blueberry tomato, which is a type of cherry tomato that's from Wild Boar Farms. They're the same ones that do the Berkeley tie-dye. But where each kind is, I'm not really sure yet. So the ones in this bed really are kind of goofy. Let me show you up here. This is some basil right here, sweet basil. I have this mixed in throughout different beds. But look, I don't know if you can see how crazy the vines are, how it curved and everything it is. So here's what happened with 8 of my tomato plants this year. Got pretty excited, and it was beginning of May, and I had 2 of the beds ready. The 3rd bed wasn't quite ready yet. I still had to get more dirt transferred in there and finish building it with the new bed. But I had 2 beds ready, and my tomato plants and pepper plants that I had started inside back in mid-March were getting pretty big, actually too big for the little portable greenhouses I have inside. So I was like, hey, it's May. let's get out there and get these things in the ground. Well, 2 days after I plant them in the ground, we get frost warnings and snow warnings. And I hadn't seen that on the extended forecast originally, so we did get snow after Mother's Day. And I came out here, dug them all back up, put them in bigger pots, and took them down in our basement where it's pretty much 63 degrees all the time, and just kind of set them on the bar down there. So they kind of were falling over and trying to get to some, you know, the basement light and whatnot. So I think that kind of really threw them off. They were down there for about a week before I came back out here and replanted them all. So all the ones that I had planted originally, dug up, taken inside and brought back out, they all are really wonky with their stems. They're all over the place. And I think they were just trying so hard to reach good light. So they look really healthy. They just have some issues they need to work out. So the rest of the side of this bed is all just tomatoes and more basil, except for down here on the end. Down here at the end of this bed, I threw in some radishes. And this is a variety that I had never grown before. I think it's like Szechuan or something like that. It's, I think, spelled S-I-C-H-U-A-N, if I'm remembering correctly. Here's the thing though, I don't really know what the deal is with these. I can't find on my order from Baker's Creek where I even bought these things. But I do have a packet from them, and they're from Baker's Creek, but I don't see them for sale on the website. So maybe they're sold out, but I can't find really a whole lot of information on them. And here's the deal. This is what's confusing me. A couple of them have already started to flower, like go to seed. That one there, and this one here. Now normally when radishes go to seed like this, they're getting pretty old, and you should see you know, an actual radish sticking out of the ground. I don't see anything. Normally you'd see a radish head sticking out. I don't know if I should pull this or if it's not ready. Like, I don't know what to do. I mean, I can always plant more. I've got more radish seeds. Should we try and pull this one because it's already gone to flower? I feel like I should. But I also am afraid that I'm doing it too early here. Because look how, can you see that down in there? There's like nothing going on. I feel like that should fill out more, but I'm afraid that with it already gone to seed and flower, that any flavor I get is gonna not be good. There's nothing there. There's nothing. I'm gonna cover that back up. I need to do more research. Or if you know anything about this variety, maybe it flowers early, please tell me. Somebody let me know. I need information. Stat. All right, let's move on. So over here, we've got long beans. These are either the yard long beans or the, let's see, is it, I don't know, one's Taiwan yard long beans, and then the other one is Chinese long green beans, or light long green beans, something like that. So these are really starting to take off. I've got two different varieties, and this is one of them along here. You see they're really coming up here on the hoop, and the idea now on this end is to have this end of the hoops covered in beans, these long beans. So I'm hoping that's what happens. The weird thing is that, I mean, you see this is up this high, 1, 2, 3, almost to the fourth rung, or whatever you want to call it, here on the on the cattle panel. This is the same variety, planted the same day. They haven't even like started the second part where they start putting off the next part of the vines here. And I'm not really sure what the deal is with these, right? So Now, here's the other variety. At least, unless I mixed them up, but no, I had one package in my hand. So here's the other variety. They're very similar, and just one has a longer bean, but they're very similar to green beans. They just are a yard long, and some of them are, I don't know, not quite a yard, but they're still really long beans. So you see now on this side, the other variety is coming up almost to the third one on a couple of these. Well, this is up 2, but these are going pretty well. Look at these over here, planted the same day. Look how tiny they are. They're not even to the first rung on the hoop yet. They're just taking their time. Now, for these in this bed, the one thing I was thinking of is this is all the new dirt. This is a 50-50 mix of manure, composted manure, and topsoil, right? With nothing else added. This is the older bed, which also has a 50-50 mix, but had a lot of like rabbit manure and other stuff added over last season, plus whatever other stuff that got worked through the soil during the year last year. So maybe the reason why these are bigger and those are so small is there's not as much nutrients going on in this bed. So I think I might need to add some good old rabbit poop to get things going. Still doesn't explain to me why these are so much shorter than those, because both sides of these are last year's dirt that have the same amount of stuff added to them. The only difference between this bed and that bed is that this bed I dug out the dirt from an old bed and moved it over here. Did moving that dirt and stirring it up help aerate it or something? Whereas maybe this is more compacted and not giving enough, I don't know. So if you have ideas, please let me know. So now down these beds, we just have peppers. Again, I would love to tell you the variety, but I don't know what's what. This pepper really is doing very well. This thing got ripped out of the ground twice when it was just a seedling. Once by the cat who ate most of it and pulled it out of the dirt. I found it right after he had decimated it, and I replanted it. Then when I moved it outside and had it in the garage, somehow it got knocked over or something, and it got knocked out of the dirt again and looked like it was completely dead. I replanted it, added some water, and then brought it out here, put it in the soil, and it is way behind all the others, but man, it's looking okay. More peppers over here on this side. Pretty sure this is poblano. Basically, I planted 3 types of peppers this year. 11 out of the 12 plants that I planted survived. So some of these are poblano, some of these are lemon yellow jalapeno, and some are ring of fire pepper. So not sure quite yet which is which. This looks almost like it could be a ring of fire just because of how tall and bushy it is. Whereas this one down here is also tall, but it's not quite as full with the foliage from the bottom up. I'm thinking this is a poblano. And maybe this one over here, maybe that's a jalapeno. They tend to be a little bit shorter than the other ones and kind of bushier, so that might be a jalapeno. So we'll find out. There's a butternut squash again. It's kind of same thing down this bed. It's more of the same in regards to basil, peppers, tomatoes. Not a whole lot of differences. Now here I did throw in some dill, just a little tiny bit, and this dill is not doing as well as the dill in my smaller beds, but it is, you know, there's a few sprouts. Only about half of what I put in here came up. This little guy, and actually these little guys, that first one was the smallest one, they actually get bigger as they go up, are Thai purple rib eggplant. These were planted like 2 months after my tomatoes and peppers inside, but then as soon as they sprouted, I put them outside right away, but I left them in the little pots. And the one thing that I did not do is I didn't give them a normal starter soil that you would start seedlings in. I just grabbed scoops of the 50-50 mix out of the pile in the yard and put them in that, and I think that might have been a little bit harder for them to get started off with, not enough beginning nutrients, and maybe I left them in the pots too long, but they really had a long period of time where they didn't grow at all. They just kind of sprouted and then stayed that way. But since I've taken them out of the pots and now planted them in the ground, maybe like a week or so, a little over a week ago, they've started putting on new leaves and started filling out some more. But I don't know if they've had enough time to really grow to their full potential this season. But we'll see. You know, it's mid-June. We'll see what happens by August. But generally, my eggplants would be the same size as my tomato plants. They just got started way later. Then down this side of the bed is just the rest of the tomatoes. These are the ones that came out later after all the other ones, so they don't have the wonky stems. They have beautiful straight stems all the way down, and they're all doing very well. They're just not quite as tall as the other ones because they came out later. And then there's that honeyboat squash, and just kind of I had some extra Swiss chard that I threw in here next to the honeyboat, and then down there at the end is a Mexican red torch sunflower that I threw in there, which he's pretty tiny, so we'll see how long it takes for him to get to his full potential. Over here is scarlet runner beans. This was the last thing that I've planted so far this year. Just kind of threw those in last week, and just a couple days ago, after some watering, they have sprouted up. So I'm hoping that they grow up this monkey bar trellis that we have stuck back down here in the corner of the garden, is the idea. So they kind of are a large, kind of purplish, black mottled looking bean that, you know, you would use like in soups and stuff. Like, they're not snap beans, they're the bigger beans that you would use like in soups and stews. This bed here is just your standard pole green bean. Mitzi was yelling at me because I always plant all this weird stuff. But I always try all these new varieties, and I don't plant the normal stuff that we like to eat, like normal green beans. So I went ahead and filled this bed. I found a package that I bought like 3 years ago from Gurney's of regular green beans, and I figured might as well try them out even though they're 3 years old. Well, I think all but one came up. So we should get some good green beans. And actually, these green beans are growing faster than any other bean that we've put in so far. They've already reached the top of the trellis with some of their vines. So it's looking like these should do really well. Again, I'm using more of the bed, and this is the rest of the Swiss chard. So I got lots of Swiss chard going on. We got Swiss chard all the way down this bed. All right, up here is the bed where I did the tool over the spinach. That spinach was planted last August. And this was a bed that had kale and some lettuce and green and red spinach. Well, the bugs got into the kale and ate it all before last fall even finished. Like, they stripped everything. I didn't have it covered last year. Well, I did cover it, but I covered it too late. The cabbage survived, green and red, but then this spring we let the chickens into the garden to scratch around the beds and could just kind of help get things going, and they liked running around in here. They would hop up in the beds, and they finished off all the green cabbage that survived over the winter, but didn't touch these 4 red cabbage plants that were here. And these things just survived over winter and now are really taking off. And As you can see down in there, they're starting to form cabbage heads. So there's 4 great big ones here, and then there's another one over here on the side. So if all goes well, especially since I've had these covered for quite some time, I'm hoping that I can get 4 cabbages out of this. Over here I have a mix of zinnia, candy tufts, and dwarf candy tuft flowers. I just kind of threw these in here to add some color to the garden and sprinkled a whole mix of them. So as you can see, they're kind of all packed in there together. But I just figured we'll throw them in there and see what happens. But they've all sprouted, or a lot of them have anyway, and there's still little ones popping up today, looks like. So maybe I'll get a nice little flower border here on the edge of my cabbage. Up here is my zucchini bed. Got 2 hills of zucchini. I don't thin my zucchini. I just put 2 to 3 seeds in each hill and just let it grow willy-nilly. And then what I will do is prune back some of the leaves later on this summer as it gets overgrown. Now down either side of the bed of the zucchini, I've planted dill. And this dill is doing much better than the dill in the big bed. I got more down here, growing down the sides, and then a couple of little random ones that are popping up here, and there's some over there. The reason why I put the dill in with the zucchini is that I read that dill attracts things like parasitic wasps. Now, while those may sound scary, that's not like your standard wasp that you freak out about when it gets in your house. Parasitic wasps are pollinators, and they also eat squash bug eggs. Now, towards the end of last summer, I had a problem with squash bugs. They actually ate pretty much all of my Kajari melons, and they finally wiped out my zucchini, but by that point I had already had more zucchini than I knew what to do with, so I wasn't really worried about it. However, what I wanted to try this year was plant some dill in with the zucchini and see if it helps attract these things to prevent the squash bug eggs, or squash bugs from coming in and laying their eggs and then hatching and doing their dirty deeds. So I'll let you know how that goes. Then on the edge here, I had planted 4, which 3 came up, teddy bear sunflowers. These only get, I think, about 3 feet high or so, and they're real kind of puffy poofy looking. So I'm hoping these 3 that survived do pretty good. The cool thing is that, so I planted one here, right? Didn't come up. But right next to where I planted it was a volunteer sunflower from last year. Don't know what kind it is. We had a couple different varieties last year, but this one came up by itself. So it's like filling out the section where the other one didn't make it. So kind of neat. The grape issue. So last year I planted Frontenac grapes. They're wine grapes, because we thought, oh, it'd be cool to grow some of our own wine grapes and make our own wine, because I've made a lot of beer over the years, and I have not made wine, but it's a similar process to making beer, so I figured I could figure that out, and thought it'd be cool to be self-sufficient enough to make wine out of our own grapes. But then there was some fungus or whatever that got in there. They didn't seem like they were doing a whole lot last year. There was a couple of vines that kind of grew, but and I didn't really do anything with them. I didn't train them, I didn't prune them. I didn't prune them back over the winter. I just was like, maybe we just won't do it, and next year we'll, pull them up and maybe we'll do something else with this area. So then they started to kind of grow, and I was like, oh, well, maybe we will keep them. Plus, I didn't get time to come over here and do any other projects because I was building the bed and other stuff, so I just kind of let them go. Now, they're getting a whole bunch of grapes on them, but they're also all over the place. Like, they haven't been trained, they haven't been pruned. It's like this big mess. So this is going to be like a whole other project. I have to figure out how to prune grapes and train them to go into the ways which I believe they shall go. But now I don't want to rip them out, because check it out. Now, let me find a good area. Look at all the little grapes coming in there. We got all these little bunches of grapes, and they're pretty tiny, but they're getting bigger. I mean, just a couple weeks ago, they were little teeny dots, and now they're actually really starting to kind of fill in and get fuller. Like, look at that one in there. So they're all through here, and some of the plants, you know, are doing much better because they get more sun. Down here on this end, that plant, you know, it's there, but this part down here has a lot more shade during the day. Plus, you know, there's weeds all growing here. It's really trying to compete. These two down here did not. There's one here, over here on the other side. These were not weeded and mulched as much. Really, I say as much. They weren't really weeded or mulched at all. Versus the 4 up on this end were mulched and cleared out last year, but I never finished the rows. So this end didn't get anything. And you can see the difference with what's going on with the plants up here. So I don't think you're supposed to prune grapes during the summer. I think I gotta wait, and maybe I can just kind of, I don't know, weave these around. I think I'm gonna add some, I got a bunch of old tomato cages that I can unroll and flatten out, and I'm gonna put them along the fence to give the grapes more stuff to hang on to, and then I'll weave them in and about like some sort of kids craft project or something. I don't know. If you have ideas, please let me know. All right, so up here, the blueberry bushes, which I just today posted the video of adding tooling to protect them from the catbirds. But this one they have not really touched yet, and so there's, you know, little bunches of blueberries all through here that you can see underneath the tool. So hoping that those ripen up well. Oh, look at this. Japanese beetle trying to get in there. Yeah, you're not getting that, buddy, are you? Can't get to that with the tool on there. So yeah, well, I'm trying to save the blueberries that I've got left because I never really harvested any. The raspberries are doing very well. Got plenty in here that need to be picked. Some probably past picking point. I've been coming in and getting random ones and eating them as the days go on. I also pick random ones and feed them to the chickens, but I haven't really done a full picking yet. I was actually going to transplant all these out here and plant flowers all along here this year. Again, another project I did not get to. So, you know, maybe next year. But there were some that were here last year that died off. And then I had this open section that was all weeds last year, right through here. And what I did is I kind of chopped up this ground through here, and I planted a whole bunch of wildflower mix in here, and they have all sprouted. I know it doesn't look like much yet, but maybe mid to late summer we'll have a lot of nice blossoms in here that will attract more pollinators and other good types of bugs and butterflies that will maybe help work against the bad bugs that come in. So we'll see what happens. And that fence on the other side, that's that picket thing, or I guess not a picket, the lattice work that's kind of just haphazardly stuck to that side of the fence, was to keep Oliver from digging underneath, because he'd always freak out about the chickens when he could see them. Now that we have that on there, he does not bother with trying to get to the chickens anymore. This is a big mint plant that was used to grow in the spot where the new raised bed is, and so I didn't want to just rip it out, so I just dug it up and stuck it in the ground here, and that was a couple months ago, and it's really done very well. It's taken off. So like having, I don't like too much mint because it does tend to take over any of places that you put it in. We used to have so much mint growing around this property that it was ridiculous. I ripped a lot of it out, but I like to keep some around. But it will take over the beds if you let it, so you have to keep an eye on it. So that is the garden tour for this week. I'll try to keep up with more of these to give you updates on what's happenings with our stuff. I'm way behind on doing the updates, but we've been posting a lot more shorter videos to show you like how-tos and DIYs and general garden knowledge stuff. So hopefully you're finding those helpful, and those cover some little bits of things throughout the garden as well. So hope you're staying safe. Hope you're having a great day and a great garden this year, a great homestead. Hope all your projects are coming together well. Thanks for stopping by and checking out our video, and hope that you will subscribe to our video and click on the little bell at the top of your screen. That will give you notifications whenever we upload new content so you don't miss anything. But, you know, thanks again for stopping in. We'll see you guys soon. Have a great day.